Hey, greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Indigenous Wisdom series. This month, I have Nic Salazar. He is the founder and director of Guardians Worldwide. And Guardians Worldwide supports the frontline nature guardians devoted to the protection and restoration of tropical and temperate forests and waters. They co-design technology and educational programs for climate change solution and eco-restoration in collaboration with Indigenous members of the Guardians Worldwide team. They believe that it's possible to reestablish harmony between human society and nature through the core values of kinship, care, and community. Welcome, Nic. Thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Tara. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you very much for your invitation to come and present myself and the work we do. I guess I should start by saying that I feel like I would be an imposter if I were to say that I represent or speak on behalf of Indigenous peoples. So just to get us started, I am not a mouthpiece or a representative of any of the people that work with us or interact with us. What we are trying to do is to create an organization that lives up to certain values that could be described as being indigenous, in the sense that they are rooted to long-term ancestral ways of connecting between ourselves as humans, but also with the non-human world. So we have an organization that we treat and we care for as a family. We do not want to create relations between ourselves that are abstract, that are hierarchical, that are defined by power relations. And so we really strive very hard to work with our children, with our families, and to connect families so that the relation that we have between us feels like the relationship you have within your nuclear family. So COVID has made traveling and spending time together difficult, but in pre-COVID times, I spent quite considerable amounts of time in the territories, especially in South America, with the families. And sometimes there were meant to be projects where we had to deliver certain products, as it were, but we always work from the basis of friendship and kinship, and we call each other, for the most part, brothers and sisters, like yourselves. And we think this opens up a very unique and special way of creating communities. So we're not an organization. We sound like an organization. Guardians Worldwide sounds like a sort of an NGO, but it's more like a family. And like all families, sometimes there are differences. Sometimes there are things that pull us apart, but there is a common love and a common care and a common feeling, and it energizes and fortifies us. And we feel really, really strengthened and emboldened by this community. We share our concerns, we share our joys. We are in constant contact through WhatsApp and through Zoom and through email, and the friends in the territories share the news of what's going on there. We share news of what we're doing, and of course we do a number of actual programs, educational and technology programs. But we work, like I said, from that family basis, and that changes everything. It changes the way we relate to one another as human beings. So it establishes that kinship that is fundamental. But we've learned from them that relationality extends to the wider family across nations. Only yesterday, one of our friends, Ketty Marcelo, a Shaninka from Peru, was saying that Indigenous peoples are like rivers. They cross boundaries and nations. They're not nation-based peoples. In other words, they don't exist within the abstract lines of countries. And we try to do that in what we do. We start our sessions by inviting everyone to tell us where they are tuning in from, but not which country they're tuning in from, which nation, which mountainside, what hill. And therefore we're connected by that sense of of flow that indigenous peoples have taught us. Like rivers flow across the land, but it's always the same river. So we carry that spirit with us in everything we do. And like I said, it establishes a very different relationality within the group, and that is then spread to nature herself as a member of kin. And that is the most powerful thing about creating these kind of communities, where the feeling of love, care, respect we have for one another as fellow humans can be spread to a relationship with a tree, like you guys do, and the very name of your organization, a sister tree, a brother tree, a sister river, a brother, cousin, sister, brother, river. What does that actually mean? Is it just, am I just saying that to make it sound good? Or do I actually feel it in the same way I love my actual brother and sister? And that's the challenge, and that's the journey of recognizing this world around us as a living family. Every single element within the living biosphere is playing a role in that family, and that's the kind of spirit of our organization. Kinship between humans and stretching that kinship into our relation to the wider natural world.
That's absolutely beautiful. And I know what you mean, because I've interviewed so many different people in different areas. And there's that spark, that relationship. You just feel that connection. And it's amazing because, you know, some of the people are in the middle of the Amazon, and you wouldn't offhand think that what I live and experience in America compares to what they feel and live and experience in the Amazon. But you just find these deep connections that run through all of us. So it's not about the boundaries. It's not about the separation. It's about reconnecting to that unity within each of us, and just, yeah, really holding that. I'm curious if you could explain a little bit about what is it that you do with your Indigenous families. I see there's like education, and you're trying to work to help. You have Indigenous-led education, training, and coaching online. We're trying to help stop the destruction of forests and rivers in the most vulnerable temperate biomes in the world. If you could speak a little bit to the actual work that you do.
Sure. Before I say that, I just want to say one last thing about that relationality. And the most powerful force in this are the children. I have children, and most of the indigenous friends who are in this family have children. And when I've traveled with my children, the children become friends straight away. And the way they relate is immediately animistic. It's life, it's joy, it's play, it's this mutual discovery. And soon they become friends. And when our children become friends, I become the uncle. So a lot of the indigenous friends' children call me uncle, and I call their children my nephews and nieces. And then the indigenous friends are my children's uncles and aunties. And working with our children is fundamental to establishing that sense of relationality as life. We're relating with one another as living beings who care, who nurture each other. And the children are the bearers of that force. So the division that we're trying to overcome, which exists in many different forms of relationality in our kind of Western world, in institutions, in education, and in all sorts of other formal ways of relating, is that big division that exists at the family between the adult and the child, where the adult has to tell the child what is right, where the rationality of the adult has to be imposed on the child, where the child is somehow always looking up. And all forms of power imbalance start with that power imbalance within the family. You were telling me earlier that you work grassroots. And for me, working with children is like doing grassroots work. And it's nurturing our future, and it's learning from them, from the natural animism and love and joy of life that they carry. So working with them is what has allowed us to create this family. So in answer to your question, what do we actually do? We do educational programs. And until now, we've been working mainly sort of adult MOOCs, massive open online courses. We've done smaller courses, than consultancy, but we're starting a new line of work, which is called Little Guardians. We're bringing in our children. We're also bringing in our children to the board of trustees to our organization, so they can tell us what they think we're doing right or wrong from their Little Guardians perspective. And we think that, like I said, working with children, working with women groups, working with the sort of frontline warriors, we work with actual sort of frontline forest guardians. It's a really important way of breaking a lot of divisions that exists at the family level, but that then, you know, stretch over to other forms of division at a more political and social level. In terms of what we do, so I said earlier a little bit, we do MOOCs, massive online open courses. At the moment, we're doing one called Guardians of the Forest. It's a 3-month-long course. It's delivered mainly online every Wednesday between 5 and 8 p.m. UK time. We have 2 workshops run in a bioregionally specific way. So every week we have a particular forest or a particular tree or grove being shared and explored by Indigenous guardians. And we do each biome over a period of 2 weeks. So for example, we'll do the Amazon forest for 2 weeks, four workshops by 4 different Indigenous teachers. Then we'll do the Atlantic forest for 4 weeks with, again, Indigenous leaders from the Atlantic forest. And overall, we cover 7 different biomes over the course of the whole MOOC. So we cover the equatorial forests of Africa, the Mau complex in Kenya and Tanzania. We've been to the Valdivian forest in Chile, to the forest of Aotearoa in New Zealand. We've been to the Amazon and the Siberian forest. And the course is designed as a transformational experience. It starts as a somatic experience where practitioners teach us how to breathe, how to align ourselves, how to sense a tree, how to appreciate interbreathing, how to relate to the tree as another physical fleshed being which shares with us DNA and many different bodily faculties. We evolved from the same species as trees. 2 billion years ago, we were the same species and we are related at that physical level. So the somatic experience of recognizing that we relate to one another when we breathe, we relate to one another when we sense and we feel. Trees and plants feel, they sense. They're extremely sensitive beings. Every leaf, every bit of that leaf is capturing light and picking up on all sorts of chemical messages. Trees have an extraordinary mycorrhizal capacity to think together. So the beginning of the course is sensitizing ourselves to that common sensorium and that common intelligence that we and trees have. We are dendritic. In other words, our capacity to think is also branches and connections and networks, except that they have evolved to have a phenomenal capacity to create a common brain made up of the roots of all the trees that exist in a forest. We are individuated brains, separated, and this causes us a huge problem because we're always struggling to connect. Our brains are always somehow disconnected one from each other. And we have evolved to become erect and to have our brains somehow flying like a planet above the ground, whereas their brain is deeply embedded in the soil, in the materiality, in the living organic substance of the earth. So we start the course with that appreciation of how to sense, feel the tree, and to find those similar characteristics that make us kin. And from there, we journey across all these different biomes so that we can understand the cultural, legal, and political implications of being a forest guardian. So once you become connected with the tree and you care and you love and you have that affinity and sense of kinship with the tree, what can you do to protect and guard the life and the future of trees and forests? And we do that through cultural practices. So we learn from indigenous peoples the importance of memory, the importance of remembrance, the importance of ritual, the importance of commemoration and mourning when forests are gone, the importance of overcoming grief and rekindling joy, all through different cultural practices that involve song and that involve storytelling. And from there we go on to what we called land justice and certain political aspects of guardianship and legal aspects. How do we connect culture with, say, ecocide or rights of nature to be able to protect those cultures that see trees as living entities, as subjects in their own right? How does culture and new earth jurisprudence come together to recognize that trees and forests and rivers are alive and have rights in their own terms? So we do that in the sort of latter part of the course, and then we finish with action. What can we actually do as guardians? So we connect our participants with a large number of forest guardian projects around the world, from agroecology in Tanzania and in Chile through to forest guardianships across the Amazon, through to rights of nature in New Zealand and Kenya, and a number of other projects that our participants can join through volunteering. So at the moment we've got like 15 different volunteering projects emerging from this course. And then finally, the course finishes with a placement where our participants go and implement and enflesh all the stuff that they've done online. They then go and experience it for either 8, 11, or 32 days in a forest community in somewhere in Europe. So at the moment we're doing placements in primary forests in Romania, Slovakia, and Cyprus. And that is all paid by the course. They go there and they meet local communities and they work doing different things. Sometimes it's eco-restoration, reforestation, cultural practices, making masks out of barks of trees, making ovens, producing food, all sorts of different activities that our participants do in these placements. That is done with a wonderful partner of ours, which is Grandpa's Heritage, who facilitates all that experiential part of the course. So overall, it's a really rich thing, and it's not education, it's transformation. And the way we do it is we all go through the process, every one of us. I, who's kind of curating, and my friends from Advaya who are co-curating and doing the admin side of things, everybody's involved, fully involved in the process of transformation. It's really quite wonderful to have, for this course, we have 300 participants from all around the world, everyone sort of chiming in and kind of affirming that it is transformational. I can't tell you, Ter, how fortifying it is to have 300 people saying that they feel amazing by what we're all doing together. And that for me is the most indigenous aspect of this, is that it creates a collective feeling. It's really and truly a collective force that is being galvanized here. A very good friend of mine, Tawana Karidishoko from the northeast of Brazil, showed me something really amazing when I stayed with him. They conduct this ritual called Orikuri, which is a forest ritual that the whole village has to conduct for three days a month or 15 days at the beginning of the year. And what they do, they go to the forest, they perform abstinence, so they don't eat certain foods, and they don't perform sex, and they clean and they heal themselves, and then together they dance for the health of the planet. And he said to me, you can't do it, Nic, because you're white. We don't allow people who are white in our ritual, but you will be the first person to see the forest. And he took me to this forest, and I was the first white person to enter into this sacred forest. And I felt the energy, and I was so moved there, because to see these people dancing collectively 3 days a month, 15 days at the beginning of the year, for humanity, for the health of humanity, is really, really, really powerful. Really powerful.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely. Yes. Oh, wow. Everything you've just described sounds so amazing. And I just love that it's fully immersive, heart and soul. It's not just, you're learning this, but you're also experiencing it and building that connection and becoming one with the group and the experience, and really taking it in. And this just sounds so amazing. It also sounds like the course might almost be over, and it's like, oh goodness, how can anyone get involved? Are the courses that you do yearly, or is this? Yeah.
So we do two large courses, MOOCs. They're 300 participants from all around the world. We do the Guardians of the Forest, which goes between May and August, and then we do Guardians of the River, which goes on from February till May. So we do two a year, and then we do these smaller courses called Follow the Land, which I teach. So I don't do anything in Guardians of the Forest or Guardians of the Rivers. I just sit there at awe at these wonderful Indigenous friends who guide us. But then I actually teach these smaller ones, more intimate ones, called Follow the Land, where I teach something called land consciousness, which I don't know if your listeners will be familiar with.
Yeah, I'd love for you to share with us an introduction to what you feel is land consciousness.
Sure. I don't think it is something that can be defined in a singular way, but the way I introduce it in the course is rekindling the nomadic in us. And I've got a video which I can show later of some of the places I visit as I teach, because I teach on a road, on a pilgrim's trail, a famous pilgrim's trail here in England called the Pilgrim's Way. So it's delivered through walking. And I invite the participants to walk with me. If you're somewhere else in the world, you walk wherever else you want to walk, and you share the experience of finding your own pilgrim's way wherever you are. And then we share these different pilgrimages. But it's about rekindling this sense of land as moving, as dynamic, as ever-changing, not as something fixed. So land consciousness starts with the recognition that land is alive, that land has cycles in its own right, in her own right, and that it's not fixed, it's not static, it's changing, it's moving. There's something in the word itself that is really interesting. I always do a little bit of kind of digging into words. And the word land, apparently, according to some linguists, shares a common root with the word loin, possibly because the original word in Proto-European might have meant the backside of an animal. So the word land meant backside of an animal, meaning the land was like an animal, a living thing, a living entity. And that recognition of the land as something that is actually alive opens up our consciousness of us humans as part of that living being, not as a disconnect or as some element that can gain ownership over the land and impose its own values and its own structures over the land. So land consciousness is the recognition that human and humus, again coming from the same root, soil, are part of the same substance, and that our intelligence, our thinking, our capacity to be conscious is embedded and woven into the land, and we have to think through the land, with the land, as land. So that's what we try to do in the course, and we do it again experientially through following the land. So we do trekking, we do transhumance, and we do pilgrimage. And again, we send our participants to amazing destinations across Southern and Eastern Europe so that they can follow transhumants in Romania, and they can follow shepherds that cross from one side of a mountain to the other and learn their ways and their intelligence of following the land, following the pastures, following the animals, and living in the state of following, which changes completely your consciousness as a human being. We're so sedentary, and so many of the crises that we live are the product of that sedentarism, that disconnection with the land as a flow. The moment we own the land, the moment we think of the land as something to be commoditized, fixed, and owned, the huge schism happens between humans and the world. Many of the flawed systems that we're trying to change now, capitalism, financialization, landed capital, they all come from that disconnect with land. So consciousness is really vital to land consciousness to changing the way we live.
It's interesting. Yes, absolutely. There's definitely a disconnect, and it just, sometimes it's very clearly obvious where it's happening, and you can just see it. And then I know in our network, there's probably many of our people who feel a connection, like they can go out to the woods or near a tree, and you just feel that energy with that being, and it helps you to like inform you and change your thought. But then the idea of land consciousness, how do you connect with it? I mean, you might already start to feel that kind of connection when you're out in the woods or something, but it also sounds like something that's a concept that's hard to come out of the Western trained thought of, land as a commodity. So is there like a simple advice or an exercise that, you could suggest that would start to help some people to move towards connecting with land consciousness?
Yeah, like I said, we do the three practices of pilgrimage, trekking, and transhumance. So the course teaches you these practices of essentially different ways of walking. But they're different ways of walking in the sense that you're walking in order to follow the land and appreciate that that flow, so that you're not following because you are guiding yourself, as we tend to do. We walk with our maps, we walk with our directions, we walk with our definite sense of where we're going in a land that is all rationalized. This is about breaking away from all that and finding a way of walking that is essentially life itself. And it sounds a bit kind of weird, but if you think of a nomad as someone who's born in a family at one particular point in the land, and this nomad family is moving from one point to another, following a river, following pastures, following seasons, following animals, life itself becomes a walk. So what we're teaching our participants is to walk and to live while walking, to allow life itself to take over when you're walking, through encounters with different beings in your walk, recognition of the living beings that are there in the space with you. So live in the walk rather than think of the walk as just a functional thing that I do from here to there. We have lost the art of following the land because we just follow ourselves, our own routines, our own rationalities, our own logics. So this is a practice of relearning how to walk as we used to walk when we were nomadic. So we will spend a month doing this online, sort of learning the ideas, the principles, the values. Then there will be physical walks in the Pilgrim's Way in Southeast England, which people can join physically through live streaming. And then we share our own experience of walking. So say you are in the East Coast, you will be invited to create your own pilgrimage to a very special place and then share it with the rest of the group. So we start to kind of devise our own pilgrimages and our own practices and what we're learning through the practice. And then at the end, people go again on placements where they do trekking for a week. in different wildernesses in Southeast Europe. Again, to train that sense that you're walking in order to gain experience and a sense of life. You're not walking in order to get to a point. I don't know if you've ever done a pilgrimage, but say the pilgrimage of Santiago de Compostela, which I've done, the Pilgrim's Way in Portugal, and the Pilgrim's Way here in Southeast England, which leads to Canterbury. They're all Christian pilgrimages. The beauty of it is not arriving at the shrine of the saint at the end. That is the least gratifying moment when you arrive in Santiago de Compostela. You arrive at this huge, very powerful, pompous city. And similarly, you arrive at Canterbury, which is this grandiose cathedral. It's the process that has given you everything of walking, of finding, of revelation. And that is the essence of pilgrimage, what we try to rekindle in this as land consciousness, walking through life.
Yes, I think I was referring, to what everyday kind of practical things for all of our viewers who are watching this call. And I think what I got from that is just when you go out and you're walking, be present to everything around you and get out of your own head. Don't ruminate on what you have to do next or how much work you have backed up. It's just experiencing life all around you and noticing those little things and connecting with them. And, it's funny you mentioned this because yesterday I was out walking and I brought up the East Coast that it was very unusual. 3 rare birds, Mississippi kites, landed in a tree very close to me. And this was quite amazing because, they're not even from this area. It's rare that they come this far up. And just everything stopped. And then I was just in their presence and sensing their message and their beauty of being here in this moment, with me. They could have chosen to fly and land anywhere, but really taking in that very unique awe. And it's such a beautiful thing to experience as well. And it sounds like the courses that you do and what you're offering just kind of sounds like such a full immersion so that it's not just a moment in time, but it becomes embedded in your being and who you are and how you live going forward. And I absolutely love that. I think it's amazing. And I'm so grateful for that.
I've done a lot of that following birds as a practice of leaving my house and just following birds. And they've taken me in amazing places. For example, I did it the other day with some of my students. I said, we're going to go on a bird walk. So this is the kind of practice I do in the course. So we all were walking together. So we were all connected mobile phones, but not all the time. It's just sort of updating one another where we were going. And the idea was to follow birds, the flight of birds. And I left my home here. I'm in Dawson Hill in Southeast London, and I started following birds. And they led me to a little pocket in a wood that I'd never seen, and I'd never been to before. And they led me to this place where there was a beehive I'd never seen before, not far from here. It's just like 10 minutes walk. And there were 2 foxes eating the honey in the beehive. It was such a beautiful moment. And that serendipity, that encounter of following other living beings and allowing them to lead you, to guide, and you to surrender to the movements, the flows, the invitations of the natural world. That's what we're doing. So absolutely, you got it, Tara. It's identifying all the signs in the land, not just of the elements that move, animals and winds and clouds, but the land herself is moving. The folds, where's the land folding to? Follow the fold of the land to find water. We have no awareness of that, of how to find water, because we go to our tap, we open, and then water comes. But as nomads, we would have had a natural understanding of how lands fold, how catchments behave, and that's movement. So we do invitations of finding where the folds of your land are, and to understand how water is moving in that land. Where's your water? Where's your nearest spring? Where's your nearest river? So once we did that exercise, I said, where's your nearest river? Don't Google. Don't just Google, where's the nearest river. Can you actually find, just by following the land, where your nearest water is? I did this with 20 people. No one found it.
Mm.
No one found it. And then I said, well, did you follow the land? Did you see where the land decline is? No, we just kind of followed this road because I remember seeing a river. And you see how we're programmed to rationalize the way we move and to go to places. But we're not identifying the land as living. Therefore, we're not in tune with the signs she's giving us, and all the living beings around us are giving us. As you say, birds. Absolutely. When you see a bird, a migratory bird that has arrived at the wrong season, at the wrong time, you know that something's going on here. And if you live in the land, with the land, you become so in tune with that. You recognize when birds should be arriving, when birds should be leaving, when certain species should be appearing, which species should be here and which ones shouldn't. All that is part of following the land, of having a conscious awareness of how things are moving and changing. We have become experts at stopping change, controlling change, to the point that we've generated climate change as a result of our ambition to control nature. And that system of control is the opposite of what we're trying to say here. So let go and allow that living land to tell you what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. Just one more thing it reminds me of, I don't know if you've heard the saying where if you're lost in the woods, you always go to look at a tree, and where the moss is on the north side, that's north. Like if you don't have a compass and you don't know which direction you're going, if you're lost. And that's, I like to go out and just look at the trees that are around me and just see, okay, this tree is facing north and this one's facing east. And you can just tell just by looking at the trees, which is, as you said, in this day and age, most people would be like, well, I need to get my cell phone out. And, we don't always have a Wi-Fi connection. And it's just so much more valuable to look at what's around you and take clues from nature and guide yourself with the land. So yeah, absolutely beautiful. And I think that I'd like to actually know more about your course. If you said you had a video that you wanted to share, and
sure,
tell us
yeah, I
a little
can
more.
share a short video of what a teaser of what this might be. I'm going to share my screen.
Sure.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
For hundreds of thousands of years, we lived nomadic lives. We lived in small family units, and our lives were like one long walk. We were born and were carried, and as we learned to walk on our own 2 feet, we also learned to follow. That is how we evolved our consciousness as a species. What were we doing? We were following the land. Follow the land is an appreciation of flows in the land and changes and transformations, and a sensitivity towards those changes. It's an ethical perspective that allows us to accept the land and respect the cycles and changes of the land. In a nomadic way of living, families follow. They're guided by the land. There is no sense of ownership. And that is the fundamental division that has caused an alienation between our consciousness, our human consciousness, and the consciousness of the land. In our course, we're trying to rekindle that nomad inside all of us so that we can begin to nurture, feed, and grow that consciousness of human and land, of human and humus together. Nomads followed. They followed wind, they followed seasonal pastures, they followed game, animals to hunt. They followed rivers to have access to water. They followed folds and different levels of land rise and landfall to gain access to shelters. I am in the North Downs in Box Hill. Down there is where the Pilgrim's Walk passes through. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans, sapiens humans and Neanderthal humans, have traversed that stretch of land, following the foothills of these downs in order to access these precious resources, especially water. It is only through the experience of walking this that you gain a sense of what true, genuine, deep land consciousness is really about. My name is Nic Salazar. Follow the Land is a 1-month-long online transformational course starting September the 6th. It is taught from here, the Pilgrim's Way, an ancient and sacred route in the country of the Weald in southeast England. The course is followed by optional placements in one of 4 amazing wilderness spots in southern and eastern Europe. In this course, you will learn to appreciate and read the land as a dynamic, living, and ever-changing being. After doing this course, you will never see land again in the same way. Join me.
Yes, thank you so much. That just speaks to my heart. There's so much that I feel and connect with when I'm outside in nature and walking on the land. And I just love that this is a deeper dive into that connection and growing it and building on it and offering it, to those who maybe haven't experienced it before, to really get to fully feel it and immerse in it. So it sounds amazing. I do wonder, what if someone lives in the city? What if they're interested in this course, but all around them is city and they don't have access to get out into a wild space? Is it still applicable to people who live in more of a city setting?
Of course. There are many practices that I have developed for a city kind of connection to the land. Land memory, for instance, to remember the land as it was before it was urbanized. To walk and get a sense of what the land was, say, 100 years ago. Who owned the land 100 years ago? Who owned the land 400 years ago? Did anyone own the land 500 years ago where you are? Where are the oldest trees around you in your city? Who planted them? Where are your roots in this city? Where were you born? So land memory is reconnecting with the temporal aspect of your city, so that you don't take for granted your city as this sort of static, fixed thing, but as something that has a history that brings you back to the land. So for example, I live in Gypsy Hill in southeast London. My friend Tawana from the Karirishoko came and said to me, it doesn't matter where you are, Nic. You can be in the middle of Sao Paulo or right here in your apartment in southeast London, and you can reconnect with nature. All you need to do is remember the land. Remember the land. Remember who lived here before you. And he said, right here where we are, Nic, there used to be a forest, he said. And I said, okay, how do you know? And he said, the spirit of this land is telling me that a forest used to grow here. And I said, okay. we did what we were going to do. He went back to Brazil. And then I started researching, and I found out where I live is the site of the Great North Wood, an ancient oak forest that used to grow from the Thames down to Croydon. And I found lots of pockets of this ancient oak woodland in the middle of the city. And I practiced what Tawana told me of land memory, to try to remember who was living here and what was their way of relating to the land. I found out that right there, I'll show you, right there, which is the top of this hill where I live. I don't know, can you see anything?
Yes, I can see.
You see all those trees there?
Yes.
Top of those, that's
Okay, we just lost the audio because of the wind, but I can definitely see.
so that forest goes on for like 3 miles.
Oh, wow.
And right there, there used to be a Celtic shrine. They found a votive Celtic goddess in a Roman temple. And I had no idea until Tawana told me, reconnect. Further down there, there's a place called Gypsy Hill. And it's just Gypsy Hill. But then I dug and I found that it was a land that used to be owned by gypsies who protected that forest. And they were forest guardians in southeast London. And the amount of land history that I've found here, I could do a whole course on just the Great North Wood. The names of the roads, the names of the roads here are all forest related because this used to be a forest. In fact, down there, it's Forest Hill, Norwood, which is Northwood. So the topography and toponymy of the land are connecting. The names we've given to our city come from somewhere. So if you're in a city, where do those words come from? Where does the word San Francisco come from? Who is Francis? Who were the first people who came here with that spiritual, religious vision? In the States, many cities, many towns have indigenous names. Do people know what those names mean? Do people know why those lands were given those names? Do people know what the names of your streets mean? So memory, land memory, is a fundamental way of reconnecting people in the city with the land. And what someone once said to me, Auntie Dina Wan, First Nation from Australia, she said, all you need to do, Nic, to achieve land consciousness is to remember. You don't need to invent anything. You don't need to create new systems. All you need to do is remember. So for those of us who live in the city, all we need to do is remember.
It sounds like a magical exploration of sorts, just to know that there's sacred land right outside your home that you weren't even aware was there. Yeah, it makes me want to run and figure out exactly what my land that I'm on right now was a part of. I also know like there is a battlefield near us where I'm at is not far from a major Civil War site in American history. And it's interesting because when I'm on that land, I almost feel this sense of sadness and loss because it was a battle site. And honestly, people were shooting, killing each other, hurting each other. It was a war. And it's almost like I want to somehow help heal that land. It's like every time I go past or through that land, I just feel that overwhelming sense. And it's, did a course include anything about healing those wounded areas? No, maybe it's a deforested area that needs that emotional healing, or maybe it's a battlefield like the one near me. Is that at all addressed in your course? Or?
Yeah. We finished, the last session is about decolonizing land, of overcoming the colonial mindset that we have with land as something to be occupied, used, abused, and destroyed. So we have that final session where we look at different practices that violate the land. Enclosures, when we enclose the land, we commoditize the land. When we build roads, we talk a lot about roads and the devastating effect that roads have on all sorts of things. And then the final aspect of the taught part of the course is a ceremony of healing. How do we cope with the pain of seeing our land devastated. Because you see, the problem of gaining land consciousness is that you also start to feel pain, because you become so sensitive to the land that you start to see her pain. And my whole journey started with that, with pain, when I saw my forest back in Chile, where I come from, dead. I grew up in a forest in La Rayana, outside Santiago in Chile. And we have experienced, just like you in California, very severe droughts for, in our case, for 11 years, as a product of the currents of the Pacific Stream changing. So El Nino and other La Nina affecting weather patterns across the entire eastern coast of the Americas. So that's affected our forests. And I went there 3 years ago, and the forests where I grew up were red. These are evergreen forests. They were red, and they were so stressed. And you see the city, Santiago, everyone living in the city, no one is looking at the mountains and the hills and following the land and sensing the stress in the land. When you become land conscious, you then encounter, you say, the pain. And it's really important in the process to be able to cope and to be strong and to heal. So it's absolutely vital. So we finish with a ceremony to feel connected and fortified when facing loss.
It just sounds so encompassing, like all the aspects, and so enriching and amazing. Let me go ahead and ask you, is there a website that if people want to learn more, they can visit?
Yeah, sure. What shall I do? Shall I?
We need to speak it out because the chat won't show.
Okay, all right. So our organization is called Guardians Worldwide, and you can find us on www.guardiansworldwide.org. So that's all one word, guardiansworldwide.org. And then if you follow to the education side of our website, you can find our courses, you can find the MOOCs, and you can find the Follow the Land.
Wonderful. Yes. Is there any last wisdom or advice, or anyone who really has that heart to want to learn more that you'd like to share with the network?
No, just to say that no one is following me, that where I started. I would be an imposter to say that I have indigenous wisdoms or that I know more than anyone else. I'm just a facilitator of processes that we all carry within us. We're all owners of our own pilgrimage, and that it's important that anyone who takes part in the process feels complete ownership over their knowledge, over their process, their memory. And that I am just another pilgrim.
Yes, but I absolutely appreciate that you have that connection with all those others and bring that forward to those of us who wouldn't know where to begin. So yes, I'm grateful it's there. Yes. All right. Well, again, thank you so very much. And I look forward to hearing and learning more, and really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, big gratitude to you for the invitation. It's been wonderful to share this with you, so thank you.
Okay, and to all of the viewers, thank you so much. Please join us again next time on our next call. Thank you.